everyone, this is Amanda. I'm just going to walk you through the full step-by-step of my first fantasy drawing. So, with an intention for keeping everything dynamic, I started actually with the sort of S-curve of what the spine would be doing. My big old oven mitt hands. I'm going to do a lot of changing and adjusting, and that's one of the benefits of digital, especially for me because I am not a natural drawer. This is something I started taking lessons through Udemy on during COVID. So I will link actually all of the things that I've done at Udemy that I think are really valuable and helpful. But you'll see that I'm, moving things around, trying to get the shapes, the basic sort of underlying big graphic shape stuff in place. Nothing detailed as of this point. This is me kind of figuring out, what am I going to do with her hands? I know that I want it to be, this is going to be sort of an elven warrior, and she is, I'm wondering, is she using magic? Are her hands free, or is she going to be holding something? So I'm kind of trying to really figure that out as I go along. While I recognize it would probably be helpful to have a greater sort of sense of where I'm going with this, I am sort of keeping this a little bit open so that I can kind of go with the flow with what is happening actually on the page. So it's a character from a story I really love on Kindle Vella, and I'll link to that as well because I just really love this story. And this elf is, she's a nymph actually. She is not one of the good guys, so I'm also trying to figure out, a little bit of posturing for what she is, sort of her underlying elements. It's probably a bit bold to start with an actual character, but it sounded fun to me. So I decided instead of having her sort of just doing magic, I was going to have her holding, she has this special sort of knife sword thing that she is using in the most recent episodes that I've read, so I thought maybe I would try that. And a shield. It doesn't actually mention a shield, but this one gets a shield. Now, I'm doing two things here. I went back to layer 1, which is the much sketchier sketch, to try and figure out the leg placement, which this is not good leg placement because she looks more like a chicken. So I'm going to keep redoing it until I feel a little bit more comfortable with the basic shape. Now, that doesn't mean that I went on to the next stage too soon. Sometimes it's just easier to see when you kind of start putting in a little bit more information. So I'm going back to layer 2 now to really try and solidify these new lines a little bit with sort of clean flow and figure out, where would her hip bone be, where would the sort of positioning of that bone be, and how's that whole thing going to work. So I'm also changing the size a little bit in relationship to her, as well as just the legs themselves looked a little too large for me. So now I've gone on to the third layer. You'll notice I turned layers 1 and 2 off so I can just see my line work. I don't want her to be sort of waifish. I want her to be a real, well, not a real woman because she's a nymph, but I want her to have more substantial features. She's not going to have like a 19-inch waist. She's going to be strong, and she's going to have more musculature and more actual, stuff. So one of the other things I'm working with is trying to figure out a dynamic pose that she's not just standing there. So is she leaning back? Is she about to strike? That's what is happening here with this movement of leg. I'm really trying to figure out how that's going to work. So I did a soft erase to just sort of take those lines down a little bit so that I can work more with darker lines over top to try and figure out what I'm really looking for. Now I put layer 3, I turned 1 and 2 off, and layer 3 is on a 50% opacity so that I can start making the details a little bit more pronounced. I could do a more fine layer for ages on a line drawing. And I think for me in particular, in this whole learning process, it's kind of deciding when you're okay to move on to the next thing and having a little bit of faith in your abilities and in sort of the process, because the processes that I have learned have been quite good. But I also get a little bit anxious is the wrong word, but impatient would be the right word. So I want to kind of go on to the next step when I probably should have spent a little bit more time on nice clean lines for this first final line drawing. So it's obviously not the final line drawing, but it's sort of the first version of trying to get that together with a little bit more detail. So I'm having a lot of trouble with the legs, mostly because I want it to really be evident that her left leg, which is on the right side of the screen, her left leg is coming forward. And it just makes it's just a little bit harder for me to really get that sort of dynamic appearance when she's facing the front as much as she is. So I've gotten much better at doing hands that are open, but hands that are closed are a new challenge for this particular painting. So I actually picked something up and held it to kind of find where that thumb would lie. I love the pinky here because it's so sort of airy and happy, but it doesn't work. It's more of a let's have tea as opposed to, something that's gripping something like a sword. So I had to redo that beautiful little pinky, but I'll keep it in mind for something else. So this is also working with perspective. So that hand is coming more towards us, which is why it looks a little bit, I'm trying to find out sort of where that balance is going to be, where that hand looks like it's coming forward and has exaggerated perspective as opposed to some of these other elements. So you'll notice I do a lot of drawing through, like I did just now with the hand on the left, her right hand, or like here with the shield. I'm going to draw through the arm in one stroke because it's just, to find those actual correct lines is just so much easier. So I draw through and then erase back. Same there. Now this is still a line sketch. This isn't your final line by any stretch. I'm still kind of finding where are the moments, like what's happening with each thing. Wanted to give her horns on her helm because she is right now she's one of the bad guys. So it's also really important, you'll notice I flipped the canvas. It's important to flip the canvas to make sure that things are symmetrical and looking the way that you intend them to look. Now, I don't mean like every element must have a mirror image. It's more that you need to, if you flip it, you can see things that are just wrong. It's just much easier to see. I will also turn things upside down to try and see that as well. And I'm trying to work really hard on the flow here, make sure that there's lots of nice S-curves with her hair, with the cape. She's got a braid. I'm just turning layers on and off to see how it's coming along. So this is the handguard part. I tried a couple different designs, but I kind of liked this sort of, out scalloped way the most. Here we have working with the facial features. It's one of the hardest parts, especially for me. I imagine it's hard for other people as well, but really just getting expressions, getting like those lines where things are, especially with fantasy art. It's going to be super obvious if I don't have correct placement, correct size. Cartoons, illustrations would be entirely different. But this is, we're working towards a final product that hopefully will be more believable than cartoony. So this was a big moment for me. I decided she would be leaning forward, like she has sort of intention forward. I think just that one shift made a huge difference. I need to clean some other things up, like her leg now. Her left leg needs to be addressed because the boot is sort of going in the wrong direction. Kind of change things up in terms of my positioning, and make sure that everything looks nice and clean in the final version in terms of orientation and perspective. So fixing the breastplate a little bit, fixing the legs, fixing the boot, all of that comes in at this point. So this is basically my line drawing sketch for the final image. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, and I hope to see you for the next one.